I woke up at midnight to a tap on my car window. A strange man offered me a key and my own last name. "Don't tell your mother," he said. "Tomorrow, you take back what was stolen." I didn't understand, until he handed me a thick file. 1 week later, I stood in a boardroom full of lawyers, activating a clause none of them expected. My name is Autumn Long. I'm 29 years old, and for the last 3 days, I've been living out of my sedan. It's not a situation I ever imagined for myself. I'm a product specialist at ArcLight Therapeutics, or at least, I was. Now I'm just a glorified admin assistant, sidelined from the only project that mattered, watching my career circle the drain. I can still see the conference room from that meeting last week. Brent Kroll, new, shiny, and smelling of expensive cologne, had called an emergency RD meeting. He clicked through his presentation, and my stomach dropped. They were my slides, my renderings, my Phase 1 data. He hadn't even bothered to change the font. "As you can see," he said, pointing to my kinematic model, "the Kroll frame prototype is revolutionary." He didn't just steal the work, he branded it. I waited until after the meeting, catching him by the elevators, my heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and disbelief. "Brent, that was my project. The wrist frame. Those are my designs." He'd smiled, a condescending, infuriating tilt of his head. "It's ArcLight's project, Autumn, and I'm the new head of RD. We need strong leadership to push this to market, not just academic tinkering." Academic tinkering. He'd dismissed 2 years of my life in 2 words. 2 years of sketching joint mechanisms, stress testing polymers on my own time, and designing a new recovery frame for complex wrist fractures. It wasn't just a project. It was my flagship idea. The concept that had gotten me hired right out of my master's program. "We're pivoting," he finished, the elevator doors sliding open. "Great initial research, but the advanced mechanics team will take it from here." He wanted the patent, not the science. And just like that, I was reassigned to verifying spreadsheets for legacy catheter products that hadn't seen an update since 1998. My initial research was now the Kroll frame, and he was fast-tracking it for a patent application. Brent was the professional avalanche, but Micah was the personal one, the slow rot I'd ignored for far too long. He left 2 weeks ago. The fight was the same one we'd had a dozen times, but this time the numbers were higher. His credit card debt. "It's just 5,000. Autumn. We're a team, aren't we? You make good money." I stared at him, at the careless way he tossed his jacket over the chair I'd spent a month restoring. "I make good money, Micah. Or we make good money." He had this way of absorbing my successes, of making my paycheck a shared resource while his own paycheck, earned from sporadic consulting gigs, vanished into online poker and dinners I didn't attend. "Don't be like that," he'd said, his voice shifting from wheedling to cold. "I supported you when you were always stressed about that stupid project." Supported me. By drinking my expensive whiskey and complaining about the hours I worked, I told him no. I told him I didn't have it. It was a partial lie. I had savings, a separate account he didn't know about, my break glass in case of emergency fund. This felt like an emergency, but not one he was part of. When I held my ground, the mask of the charming, easygoing boyfriend dissolved. He saw I was no longer a resource. He saw a boundary. He packed a single duffel bag, leaving behind the expensive espresso machine I'd bought him and a stack of utility bills I now realized were all in my name. He was gone in under an hour. The final blow came 3 days later. A crisp white envelope taped to my door. The apartment management company, citing market adjustments, was increasing my rent by 30%, effective the 1st of next month. 30%. It was astronomical. It was illegal, probably. But I didn't have the energy or the money to fight it. Denver was squeezing everyone dry. I did the math in my head, standing there in the hallway, my reduced thanks, Brent paycheck minus Micah's missing contribution, plus the rent hike, equaled 0, less than 0. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to drain my emergency fund just to stay in an apartment that suddenly felt haunted by Micah's absence and my own failure. I paid for a climate-controlled storage unit, moved my furniture, my clothes, and my entire life into a 10 by 10 concrete box. Everything else, the essentials for survival, went into my car. 2 or 3 nights, I told myself, just 2 or 3 nights sleeping in the back seat until I find a cheaper sublet, until I figure out my next move at ArcLight. This was night 3. My neck was locked in a permanent, agonizing crick. My Toyota wasn't built for sleeping. I was parked at a 24-hour gas station in the suburbs, just far enough off the highway that the cops wouldn't bother me, but bright enough that I felt relatively safe. I'd been here for 3 hours, trying to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. My reality was too sharp. I was 29 years old, highly educated, employed by a major medical tech firm, and homeless. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from my mom. "Tara, haven't heard from you. Are you eating?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't tell her. Her brand of help always came with strings, with a heavy price of guilt and "I told you so." I couldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing her prediction that I'd fail without her was coming true. I ignored the text. The fluorescent lights of the convenience store cast a sickly green glow over my dashboard. It was late, maybe midnight, maybe 1 in the morning. I'd lost track. I was exhausted, not just tired, but hollowed out, the kind of fatigue that settles deep in your bones, a precursor to giving up. My backpack, lumpy with my laptop and my most important notebook, was wedged against the passenger door, serving as a pillow. The smell of stale coffee and old upholstery filled the small space. I closed my eyes, trying to force oblivion, just a few hours, just until the sun came up. Then I could go to the gym, shower, put on my professional mask, and go back to the office that was actively erasing me. That's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. My heart hammered against my ribs. I jolted awake, instantly alert. It wasn't the sharp rap of a police officer. It was quiet, measured. I wiped the condensation off the glass with my sleeve. A man stood outside, backlit by the gas station's canopy. An old man. He wasn't threatening. He looked refined. He wore a dark wool coat, the kind you don't see in this part of town, and held his hands loosely at his sides. I cracked the window, just an inch. The cold night air sliced in. "Can I help you?" My voice was rough with sleep and fear. "I hope so," he said. His voice was gravelly but clear, educated. "I apologize for the hour. May I call you granddaughter?" My blood ran cold, then hot. "What? Who are you?" "I think you have the wrong person." I reached for the ignition, my hand shaking, ready to peel out. "I don't," he said, holding up a hand, palm out. "You are Autumn Long. Your mother is Tara." I froze. He wasn't guessing. "My name is Eldon Rhodes. I am your grandfather." Rhodes. The name hit me like a physical blow. It was my mother's maiden name, the name she'd cursed and spat but never explained, the name of the man who, according to her, had abandoned his family, a ghost who existed only in bitter anecdotes about a stolen inheritance and a cold heart. It was reckless, stupid, but I opened the door. I got out of the car, the cold gravel biting at my socks. Up close, he looked like money, old money. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and intensely blue. He looked nothing like my mother. He looked tired, but focused. "How did you find me?" "I've been aware of you for some time, Autumn," he said, his gaze dropping for a second to the sleeping bag crumpled in my back seat. "When you missed your rent payment, I asked my people to locate you. I did not expect this." A wave of shame washed over me, hot and sickening. I crossed my arms, suddenly aware I was wearing the same sweatshirt I'd worn for 2 days. He reached into his coat pocket. I flinched, a stupid, reflexive action. He pulled out a simple plastic key card and a thick white envelope. "This is a key to a residential motel suite 2 blocks from here, the Crestview Inn. It's paid for a month." He held it out. I stared at his hand. "I don't take charity," I snapped, the words tasting like acid. Good, he said, his expression unchanging. This is not charity. It's an advance. He placed the keycard on the roof of my car and slid the envelope next to it. There is $5,000 in cash in there, an advance against future services. Services? What services I'm not? Your mind. Autumn, he interrupted, his gaze sharpening. You still have your notebooks, do you not? The ones with the anatomical sketches? The mechanisms for the wrist joint? Time stopped. My breath caught in my throat. My backpack, the one serving as my pillow, suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. No one knew about those. Not really. Micah had seen me sketching but called it doodling. Brent had only seen the finalized, corporate-scrubbed presentation, the raw concepts, the core mechanics. Those were in a black moleskin notebook currently digging into my shoulder blade. How do you know about that? My voice was barely a whisper. We don't have time for the full story tonight, Eldon said, checking a classic, simple watch on his wrist. Take the room, get some sleep, but there is one condition. What? Do not tell your mother. Do not call Tara. Not yet. He paused, his blue eyes locking onto mine. Meet me for breakfast tomorrow, 8 o'clock, the Oak Hill Diner. It's next to the motel. We will talk then. I stared at him. This was insane. A stranger, a ghost from my mother's toxic past, appearing at midnight at a gas station, offering me cash and a room, and knowing my most guarded secret. Every instinct screamed, trap. My mother's voice was in my head. He's poison. Autumn. He destroys everything. But my mother wasn't here. My mother hadn't called in 3 weeks, and my neck ached, and the $5,000 in that envelope was a lifeline I was drowning without. I'll take the key, I said, my voice firming. I'll meet you for breakfast, but I'm not touching the money until you tell me everything. How you found me, and how you know about my designs. A flicker of something respect approval crossed his face. Fair enough. He started to turn away, then stopped, as if remembering something. He reached into his coat again, this time pulling out a thick, legal-sized manila file. It was bound by a thick rubber band. One more thing, he said, his voice dropping. While you were sleeping, I was reviewing this. It seems your timing is impeccable. He handed it to me. It was heavy. My fingers, numb from the cold, fumbled with it. I looked at the label, printed in simple block letters on the tab. Rhodes Family Trust, Northline Holdings. What is this, that? Eldon Rhodes said, the corner of his mouth twitching in the first hint of a smile. Is leverage. That is how we ensure Mr. Kroll and Arclight Therapeutics remember your name. He turned and walked to a dark, sleek sedan, a Bentley. I realized with a jolt parked in the shadows by the air compressor. He got in without a backward glance and drove away, leaving me standing in the fluorescent glare, holding a motel key, an envelope of cash, and a file that felt heavier than my entire life. My hands were shaking, not just from the cold. This was either a rescue or a new kind of prison. Rhodes Family Trust, Northline Holdings. The names meant nothing to me, but they meant something to him, and they clearly, somehow, meant something to Arclight Therapeutics. A cold, sharp clarity cut through the fog of my exhaustion. I wasn't just tired and broken. I was angry. I was furious. Brent had taken my work. Micah had taken my money. My landlord had taken my home. I was done being taken from. I looked at the file, then at my car, then at the key. The balance of power was shifting. I just didn't know if it was shifting toward me, or if I was being crushed between two mountains. I didn't care. Either way, the ground was moving. I grabbed the envelope and the file, locked my car, and started walking toward the motel. I would sleep in a real bed tonight. Tomorrow, I would get answers. And then, I would get even. I slept for 6 solid hours. It wasn't just sleep. It was an unconditional surrender. The kind that only comes after you've hit rock bottom and found, improbably, a mattress. The shower at the Crestview Inn was scalding hot, and I stood under the stream until the grime and humiliation of the last few days, the sedan, The pitying looks. The cold wash down the drain. I put on the last clean, professional outfit I owned, a pair of dark slacks and a silk blouse, feeling the unfamiliar armor of respectability settle back onto my shoulders. The Oak Hill diner was exactly as he'd described, a 70s relic smelling of burnt coffee, frying bacon, and bleach. It was exactly 8 o'clock. Eldon Rhodes was in a corner booth, a broadsheet newspaper folded neatly beside a heavy ceramic mug. He looked different in the daylight, less like a midnight savior and more like a professor or a judge. The expensive wool coat was gone, replaced by a tweed jacket that looked worn but immaculate. He saw me approaching and nodded, a gesture that was neither warm nor cold, merely an acknowledgement. I slid into the vinyl booth. The waitress, a woman with a beehive hairstyle that defied gravity, materialized instantly. "Coffee? Black?" Eldon said, not looking up from his menu. "And for my granddaughter," the word still felt strange, like a borrowed coat. "The same, black." He waited until the waitress shuffled away before he folded his hands on the formica table. The thick white envelope of cash, which I had placed between us, remained untouched. "You didn't use the advance," he observed. "I said I wouldn't," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Not until you told me everything, how you found me, and how you know about my notebook." He accepted this with a slight inclination of his head. "The Rhodes family," he began, his voice low and measured, "was never complicated, just unfortunate. Your grandmother, Elena, was the ballast. She was a brilliant woman, an engineer by training, a financier by necessity. She built Northline Holdings from almost nothing. I handled the acquisitions, but she handled the ethics." His gaze drifted past me, to the window, to a memory I couldn't see. "She died too young, 1994, cancer, very aggressive. Your mother, Tara, and your aunt, Luann, were in their early 20s. They expected immediate liquidity, a windfall." The waitress returned, pouring 2 streams of dark, steaming coffee. Eldon paused, thanking her, and waited until she was out of earshot. "Elena's will was specific. The assets, Northline Holdings, everything, was to be held in the Rhodes Family Trust, managed by me. She set clauses, maturity clauses, ethical clauses. She did not trust their judgment with the legacy she had built." "My mother said you stole her inheritance," I said. The words were blunt, an accusation I had grown up hearing, a foundational myth of my childhood. Eldon didn't flinch. "Yes, that is the narrative Tara prefers. The truth is, I refused to break the trust to fund her boyfriend's doomed startup. I refused to liquidate assets so Luann could buy a condominium in Maui. They saw the trust as a bank account. Elena saw it as a future. When I enforced your grandmother's wishes, Tara disengaged. She took your father's name, Long, and made it clear she was no longer a Rhodes. She cut me off, completely." He sipped his coffee. "But I never lost track of you." My breath hitched. "How?" "When you were a senior in high school, you applied for the Denver STEM Founders Scholarship, a $10,000 grant. I sit on the board of the foundation that funds it." My mind flashed back. That scholarship. It wasn't just helpful. It was the only reason I'd been able to attend my first choice of university. It had been the difference between my education and a life of compromises. "You?" I started. "You were the anonymous donor. I ensured your application was read fairly," he corrected gently. "Your essay did the rest. It was about biomechanics, about designing kinematic chains to mimic natural human mobility. It was..." He looked away for a moment, a flicker of emotion passing over his stoic face. "It was brilliant, practical, empathetic, intelligent. It reminded me of Elena." He had been watching me for a decade. The realization was heavy, a confusing mix of violation and profound validation. "I followed your career. When you were hired at ArcLight Therapeutics, I was pleased. It's a solid, if uninspired, company. I knew this because 4 years ago, during their second round of funding, Northline Holdings acquired a small, minority stake in them. The pieces clicked into place, sharp and cold. "The file," I whispered, nodding at the manila folder I'd brought. "That's how you know." "That's how I knew," he confirmed. "As a minority shareholder, I have access to certain high-level investor briefs, strategic outlines, major patent filings. 3 days ago, an abstract for a new priority patent crossed my desk. It described, in clinical detail, a new mechanism for a wrist recovery frame." "The Kroll frame," I said, the name tasting like ash. "The Kroll frame," Eldon repeated, his eyes hardening. The mechanism seemed familiar. It echoed the language of your scholarship essay, but matured. It was too specific. I utilized my right as an investor to request due diligence clarification. Citing a potential conflict with existing intellectual property, the company stalled. So, I reached out to another small investor, someone over whom I have some influence, someone with deeper access. He slid a single sheet of paper from inside his jacket. It was a printout of an email. My eyes scanned the text, and the air left my lungs. It was from Brent Kroll. I saw my own name in the body. "We need to lock this patent down by Friday." The core design came from Long's initial research files, but I finalized the functional mechanics. Ensure my name is listed as primary inventor. She's just a junior specialist. She won't fight it. I read it twice. The casual, confident theft. The dismissal. She won't fight it. He admitted it, I whispered, the paper rattling in my trembling hand. "He's arrogant," Eldon said, "and sloppy. He assumes you are powerless." "But how did he get the core files I never showed him my notebook?" Then a sickening realization rolled through me. Oh God, the internal server, the RD database. "You uploaded your initial descriptions," Eldon stated. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admitted, shame washing over me. "It was the required protocol for initiating a new RD track, a conceptual overview, the first phase mechanics. I put it in the database 6 months ago. I thought it was safe, that it timestamped my work." "It did," Eldon said, "but Brent has senior admin access. He can access everything. He didn't need your notebook. He just stole the data you voluntarily gave his company." "Then I have no recourse," I said, the new hope draining away. "My employment contract, it says anything developed on company time, using company resources, is theirs," he finished. "But was it developed on company time, or was it developed in your apartment, in your notebooks, on your own time, long before you typed it into their database? Brent isn't just claiming the product, he's claiming authorship of the core idea. That is fraud. And that," he tapped the thick file, "is where Northline Holdings comes in." He leaned forward. The clatter of plates and the diner's morning chatter faded into a dull roar. "We are minority shareholders. Autumn. We can't fire him. We can't force them to do anything, not directly, but we can make their lives excruciatingly difficult. We can challenge the patent application. We can expose their internal ethics violations to the board. We can tie them up in legal knots until they realize it is infinitely cheaper to give you credit than to fight me." He held my gaze, his blue eyes sharp and assessing. "But I will not start this battle without you. You have to decide what you want. This isn't just about money. This is about your name." He paused, delivering the question that would define everything that came next. "So, I ask you, do you want to reclaim your work, or do you want to make them remember why they should never have stolen it in the first place?" I didn't hesitate. The broken, exhausted girl who had cried herself to sleep in a Toyota was gone. The woman sitting here, fueled by black coffee and a righteous, glacial fury, knew the answer. "I want both," I said. "I want my name on that patent, and I want them to know, he needs to know, that I am not just some junior specialist he can sweep aside." A slow, wolfish smile spread across Eldon's face. It was the first time I'd seen him look genuinely pleased. "Good. That's your grandmother talking." He pushed the envelope of cash toward me. "This is yours. Use it to terminate your old lease, pay the storage unit, live." But his tone became serious. This is the last cash you get from me. I looked at him, confused. This is an integrity test. Autumn, I am offering you something far more valuable than money. I am offering you tools. If I just hand you checks, you become a dependent. You become your mother. I need to know you are a partner. I will fund the entire legal fight. I will pay for the lawyers, the investigators, the filing fees, but I will not pay for your life. This $5,000 is all you get. The rest, you must earn. He reached into the worn leather briefcase at his feet and pulled out two things. The first was a plastic ID card, Northline Holdings, legal library access. My fund maintains one of the most comprehensive private law libraries in the state, he said. You will go there, you will study, you will learn everything there is to know about intellectual property, corporate contracts, and whistleblower protections. You will become an expert. The second was a business card. Simple, thick cardstock. Sienna Mora, IP litigation. Sienna is the best IP attorney I know. She's sharp, she's hungry, and she despises corporate bullies. I've already briefed her. She's expecting your call. She will be your weapon. He slid them across the table. I took them. They felt heavier than the envelope of cash. Now, the warning, he said, his voice dropping again. The one condition I gave you last night. Do not tell Tara. She's my mother, I started. A weak, reflexive defense. Your mother and your Aunt Luann, he cut me off, his voice void of malice but full of certainty, are opportunists. They are driven by the grievances of 25 years ago. The moment they learn I have re-established contact, the moment they learn there is a conflict involving Arclight and Northline, they will not see your fight. They will see a vulnerability. They will see a chance to leverage my interest in you to get what they've always wanted, a payout from the trust. He leaned in closer. They will try to sabotage you. Autumn. Not because they hate you, but because they are desperate. They will try to get money. They will demand their fair share. They will disrupt this entire process if they see a path to a quick settlement. Do you understand? I did. I remembered every phone call with my mother that ended in a veiled request for help, every bitter complaint about how unfair her life was, how much she was owed. My chest ached. For the first time in my entire adult life, a family member was standing in my corner. He wasn't offering platitudes or telling me to be the bigger person. He was offering a strategy. He was offering a war. He saw Brent's theft not as a misfortune to be endured, but as an injustice to be corrected. The validation was so powerful it almost brought me to tears. He was testing me. He wanted to see if I was a Rhodes or just Tara's daughter. I won't tell them, I said, my voice firm. This stays between us and Sienna. Good. He looked at the envelope of cash I still hadn't taken. I pushed it back toward him. I don't want the advance. He raised an eyebrow. I have my own savings, I said. An emergency fund. I'll use that. This can't be. This can't be you buying me. I need to do this myself. Eldon looked at the envelope, then at me. He smiled again. That slow, satisfied smile. He picked up the envelope and put it back in his jacket. All right, Autumn. I picked up Sienna Mora's card. Give me the legal path, I said. I'll walk it. You already are, he said, signaling the waitress for the check. Now finish your coffee. You have a call to make, and a lot of reading to do. Sienna Mora was not what I expected. She was in her early 30s, sharp and minimalist, with a severe haircut and an office that was all glass, chrome, and cold. Directional lighting. There was no small talk. The moment I sat, her monitor was already angled toward me. Eldon briefed me on the basics, she said. Her voice was a precise alto, devoid of sympathy. She wasn't here to hold my hand. She was here to win. He also forwarded your employment agreement and the initial concept summary you filed with Arclight. I need your RD portal login. Now. I gave it to her. Eldon said Brent stole the idea I filed. He did, Sienna said, her fingers moving in a blur across the keyboard, navigating through Arclight's internal servers with frightening ease. Brent's email confirms he took your digital files. That's a breach of conduct. but legally, they'll argue it's senior management oversight. They'll claim he was developing your initial concept. It's messy. We need something cleaner, something that proves he didn't just access the work. He stole the source. She pulled up the master access logs for the entire RD department. We know Brent fast-tracked the Kroll frame project file. Let's look at the commit history. I leaned in, my own technical knowledge kicking in. There. The creation date, that's my login. 6 months ago. Good, Sienna murmured. Establishes a timeline, but it doesn't stop them from claiming derivative work. We need the exact moment of the theft. She cross-referenced Brent's user logs with the file access timestamps. He downloaded your summary 3 weeks ago. Predictable. But wait. She stopped. This is interesting. A different asset was uploaded to the project folder. 3 days before Brent's big presentation, it wasn't a data commit. It was a manual file upload. Her mouse hovered. The user is Owen Pike. Time, 2:14 a.m. Owen. My stomach tightened. I know Owen. He's a junior engineer. He's good. He's quiet. He wouldn't be uploading assets at 2 in the morning. He's strictly 9 to 5. Sienna clicked the file. My heart stopped. It wasn't a KD rendering. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a series of high-resolution photographs. Oh my God, I whispered. That's my notebook. It wasn't the clean corporate summary I had uploaded to the server. This was the real thing. My private black moleskin, my raw sketches, my handwritten equations, my frustrated notes in the margins, the coffee stain on page 12, photographed, page by page. He had my physical notebook, I said, my voice shaking with a new, cold fury. But how I never brought it to— Wait, yes, I did. Once, about a month ago, I left my backpack at my desk when I went to the cafeteria. I was gone for 20 minutes. He didn't just take the data you submitted, Sienna said, her voice grim. He physically went through your private belongings and stole the concepts you hadn't yet submitted. This changed everything. This wasn't company resources. This was breaking and entering. Sienna was already downloading the image files. Let's check the metadata. She pulled up the EXIF data on the first photograph. File created, 2:14 a.m., camera, ArcLight RD Lab, Cam 04, location. Lab 3. He used a stationary lab camera, not his phone. Sienna noted, arrogant and incredibly stupid. He created a company record of his own theft. I zoomed in on one of the photos. My notebook page was resting on a polished, stainless steel work table. The harsh overhead lights of the lab created a faint, distorted reflection in the metal. Sienna, I said, my pulse hammering. Look, in the reflection, on the steel. She enhanced the image, isolating the reflection. It was blurry, warped by the curve of the table, but unmistakable. A figure, leaning over the notebook, a white lab coat, and pinned to the pocket, a red ID badge. Owen's badge is blue, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Junior engineer. Whose is red? Senior management, I said. Brent Kroll. We locked eyes. Owen Pike's login, Brent Kroll's reflection, 2:14 in the morning. He didn't just order it, Sienna said, a thin, predatory smile touching her lips. He supervised. And he used a junior's login to create a scapegoat. He must be threatening Owen's job. Send it, I said. Send what? The letter, the one you told me about. Sienna pulled up a document template. Her fingers flew, drafting a new paragraph. Re-notice of pending litigation and demand for preservation of evidence. This notice, she explained, is a legal litigation hold. It makes it illegal for ArcLight to destroy, delete, or alter any evidence. That includes server logs, keycard access data, and all of Mr. Kroll's emails. She clicked send to ArcLight's general counsel. And a separate, identical copy, she added, typing a new address. Goes directly to Mr. Owen Pike at his home address. The company will try to control the narrative. Owen, on the other hand, will panic. He's our weak link. That evening, I met Eldon at a quiet bar. I told him about the photographs, the metadata, the reflection. He nodded slowly, absorbing it all. Good, Sienna found the pivot. But this is insufficient. I stared at him. Insufficient. We have him on camera, committing theft. You have a blurry reflection, Eldon corrected patiently. They will claim it's inconclusive. They will sacrifice Owen Pike. They will say he acted alone, then fire him for cause, and issue a company-wide memo on data security. Brent will walk away, claim he was given the files by Owen, and the patent will proceed with his name on it. We have proven the theft of the original work, but we have not secured your ownership of the future work. He pushed a simple retail bag across the table. Inside was a new black notebook, identical to my old one, and a package of my favorite Japanese drafting pens. What's this? A trap, Eldon said. You told me you had ideas you hadn't sketched yet. Improvements. Things that came to you in the weeks after Brent stole the initial design. Yes, I said, my mind racing. A modification to the tension mechanism. It reinforces the carpal ligament support. It's more complex, but it could reduce standard physical therapy time by at least 20%. Write it down, he ordered. Go to the Northline Library. Number every single page in this new book. Write down everything you remember from the first notebook, from memory, and then, starting on page 50, you will add your new improvements, every last detail. And then what? Then, Eldon said, you will take it to a public notary, you will sign and date every single page, and the notary will witness it. We are creating an undisputed, physical, notarized record of your entire concept, including the parts Brent doesn't even know exist yet. I spent the next 48 hours in the silent, wood-paneled Northline Legal Library. I didn't sleep. I wrote until my fingers cramped, filling the pages with schematics, equations, and material stress calculations. I detailed the original design, and then I detailed Phase 2. The version Brent Kroll had no idea existed. I took the completed book to a notary public. I signed every page, my hand aching. The notary stamped each one, the heavy thud of the seal feeling like a drumbeat. Sienna took the scanned, notarized copy. She didn't send it to Arclight. We don't show them our new cards, she said. We just establish their existence. She uploaded the entire file to an independent, blockchain-based time-stamping service. It was now digitally certified as existing. Under my name, on this specific date, it was an invention, untouchable. The first official response from Arclight's lawyers arrived. It was exactly as Eldon had predicted, dismissive, arrogant. Ms. Long's claims are without merit. All work product, research, and ideation developed by Arclight Therapeutics employees are the exclusive property of the company, as stipulated in the employment agreement she signed. Sienna dictated her reply while I sat across from her. Dear Counsel, you misunderstand. We are not disputing the work-for-hire clause regarding work developed at Arclight. We are asserting that the foundational intellectual property was conceived and developed by Ms. Long on her personal time, using personal property, prior to its introduction to your systems. They'll demand proof, I said, the anxiety returning. And we will provide it, Sienna said. She attached a small digitized file to her email. It wasn't the notebook. It was a folder of my receipts. My receipts, your receipts, she confirmed. For the original moleskin notebook, purchased 2 years ago at a bookstore in Boulder. For the specific drafting pens, purchased at the art supply store near your old apartment. Geolocation data from your phone, time-stamped, showing you at home on the specific weekends you did the bulk of the design work, cross-referenced with your journal. We are demonstrating a clear pattern of off-hours development using personal assets, which, as I'm sure you know, is the specific carve-out exception listed in Section 4, Paragraph B of your own Arclight employment contract. She sent a second letter, more aggressive this time. We demand an immediate internal investigation into the actions of Brent Kroll and Owen Pike for the theft of personal property and conspiracy to commit intellectual property fraud. We also demand a full and immediate freeze on the patent application for the Kroll frame, pending the outcome of this investigation. The explosion at the office was immediate. The atmosphere turned toxic. I was still employed, but I was a ghost. People avoided me in the hallways. I felt their stares in the cafeteria. I walked past Brent's glass-walled office. He saw me, his face, visible to the entire floor, contorted in rage. He slammed his door open and stalked into the open-plan area. Autumn. His voice was a parade ground shout, intended to be overheard by everyone. I stopped. I turned. I refused to be intimidated. I just waited. I don't know what kind of pathetic game you're playing, he hissed, walking right up to me. But this is my project. You were a junior. You should be grateful I took your half-baked idea and made it viable. My half-baked idea, I said, my voice quiet, which only made it cut deeper. You mean the one you had Owen Pike photograph from my private notebook at 2:14 in the morning? The blood drained from his face. He hadn't known we had that. He hadn't known about Owen's login. You are ungrateful, he sputtered, regaining his composure with a bully's bluster. You're trying to blackmail the company. I'm going to HR. You're finished here. He stormed off. 2 hours later, an email landed in my inbox. It was from Human Resources. Subject formal warning, insubordination and unprofessional conduct. The email detailed a pattern of disruptive behavior, failure to follow management directives, and creating a hostile work environment. It was Brent's retaliation, sanitized by corporate jargon. They were building a paper trail to fire me for cause. I forwarded it to Sienna. I didn't even add a comment. Her response was immediate. A new letter was fired off to ArcLight's general counsel, copying the entire HR department. We are now formally adding a complaint for illegal retaliation against a whistleblower under state law. This formal warning, issued precisely 2 hours after Ms. Long verbally confronted Mr. O'Kroll about the documented IP theft, is a clear, malicious, and actionable violation. Any further disciplinary action taken against our client, including termination, will trigger immediate litigation and a request for punitive damages. A wall of silence. The company had realized this wasn't just a disgruntled employee. This was a structured legal attack. The next afternoon, a calendar invite appeared in my inbox. It wasn't from HR, it was from the General Counsel's office. Subject internal hearing regarding Project 54B Kroll frame. It was scheduled for next week. Sienna called me. They're blinking. The board is scared. They've scheduled an internal hearing. We won, I said, a wave of dizzying relief washing over me. No, Sienna said, her voice hard as diamond. We haven't. They didn't cancel the patent application. They just called a meeting. This is where they try to bury us in procedure, or buy us off cheap. This is where they find out who we are. Get ready. Autumn. The investigation is over. The war just started. Eldon's warning about my mother was prophetic. It took less than 48 hours after the internal hearing was scheduled for my phone to ring. It wasn't just a leak. It was a deluge. Someone inside ArcLight, likely from HR or the legal department, had connections. The rumor mill had twisted the facts, painting me as a disgruntled junior employee trying to extort the company by leveraging a connection to a wealthy, estranged relative. The narrative was designed to discredit me, and it was the perfect bait for my mother. I was in the Northline Library, reviewing case law on patent authorship, when Tara's name flashed on my screen. My stomach immediately clenched. I hadn't spoken to her since before I'd moved into my car. I let it ring, trying to compose myself, but it immediately rang again, insistent. I stepped into a soundproof alcove and answered, Hi, Mom. Autumn, thank God. I've been hearing the most awful things. Her voice was a symphony of forced, breathless panic. This was her crisis mode, the one she used when she smelled an opportunity. People are saying you're in some kind of legal trouble at work, that you're suing them, Autumn. What did you do? I'm handling a professional matter. Mom. It's complicated, but it's under control. Under control, I heard you were fired, that you've been talking to him. Her voice dripped with a venom I knew well. Him, Eldon. I heard Eldon Rhodes is involved, she pressed, her voice shifting from panic to accusation. Is that true? He found you, didn't he? He's poisoning you against us, just like he always does. He's a manipulator. Autumn, he's trying to use you. He's helping me, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Helping? She scoffed. The sound was sharp, brittle. That man doesn't help. He buys, he controls. What did he give you? Money. He must have given you money. I bet he gave you a lot. I stayed silent. The silence was its own answer. Oh, Autumn, she breathed. And now the real motive emerged, wrapped in a suffocating blanket of fake concern. You don't know how to handle money like that. You don't know how he operates. He's going to trap you with it. You need to come home, right now. Bring whatever he gave you, and we'll protect it for you. Your uncle and I. We can put it in a safe investment. Something he can't touch. We'll keep it secure for you. We'll keep it secure for you. The same words she used when she held on to my birthday money when I was 12 and I never saw it again. The same words she used when she convinced me to co-sign her car loan, tanking my credit before I even turned 20. There is no money to invest. Mom, I said, my patience snapping. I'm not coming home. Don't you be ungrateful, she snapped, the mask of concern vaporizing. After everything I did for you, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't even have finished school. You'd be nothing. A sharp, painful laugh almost escaped my lips. What exactly did you do for me? Mom. Because I seem to remember me working 30 hours a week at the campus library to pay for my books. I remember me applying for every scholarship I could find, including the one Eldon apparently funded. I remember you being in Cancun with your boyfriend when I graduated from my master's program. Where were you? I was working, she shrieked, a familiar, defensive lie. I was always working to keep a roof over your head. You were always absent, I said, the words falling like stones into the silence. You were always chasing something, and it was never me. I have to go. Mom, I have a meeting. Autumn, don't you dare hang up on me. That old man is… I ended the call. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely press the button. It wasn't just anger. It was a profound, hollow grief. I sat in the silence of the alcove for a long time. I was a 29-year-old woman, in the middle of a corporate war, and a 5-minute conversation with my mother could still reduce me to a weeping, furious child. As if on cue, a text message notification lit up my screen. This one was from my Aunt Luann, Tara's sister, the softer, more wheedling side of the same coin. Hi, honey. Just heard from your mom. She's very upset. I hope you're okay. Listen, I know Grandpa can be very persuasive. If he's finally decided to do the right thing and, adjust the trust or divide some of the assets, just make sure you remember your mother's share. It needs to be fair. She's suffered a lot. We all have. Call me. I stared at the message. Your mother's share. It was never about me. It was never about my stolen work, my job, my distress. It was a feeding frenzy. The sharks were circling, and they thought Eldon had finally bled into the water. I forwarded the text to Eldon with a single word, Tara. His reply came a minute later. Expected. Do not engage. Do not argue. Do not defend. You are a rock. Let them break themselves against you. Let the documents speak. His calm was an anchor. Let the documents speak. He was right. Arguing with Tara was like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. It was pointless and messy. I put my phone on silent, burying it in the bottom of my bag, and forced my eyes back to the legal text. But the words blurred. My focus was shattered. All I could see was that text, your mother's share. Later that week, I was meeting Eldon for a strategy session with Sienna when another text from Luann came through. I'd made the mistake of leaving my phone on the table. Eldon glanced at the screen. Honey, just another thought. I was looking at the Zillow estimates for the old Rhodes property up near Boulder. The market is insane. We should really talk to Grandpa about selling that land now, while we can still catch this real estate wave. It would be a huge help for everyone. I read it and felt a cold dread. The Rhodes property. The ancestral land. Eldon's eyes narrowed. He picked up his own phone. He wasn't texting. He was making a call. "Mark, it's Eldon," he said. His voice clipped and all business. "I need you to pull the file on the Boulder Creek parcel. The one held in the primary trust. Yes, I want you to immediately draft a motion to transfer title from the primary trust to the new charitable subtrust, the one we established last month. And I want you to expedite the filing of the new covenant." He listened for a moment. "Correct. The Ethics and Education Covenant. The one that stipulates the land can only be used for nonprofit educational purposes and can never be sold or commercially developed. I want it filed with the county by end of day. Call me when it's done." He hung up and looked at me. "She wants to sell the land," I said, stunned. "She always wants to sell the land," Eldon said, a weary disgust in his voice. "It's the one major asset outside the Northline equity that they think they can touch." "But you just moved it. You locked it down." "Yes," he said. "Your grandmother Elena wanted that land preserved. It's where she did her first field research. It was sentimental." I suddenly understood. This wasn't just a sentimental move. It was a legal one. By moving the land into the new subtrust and locking it with an ethics clause, a covenant that made it commercially worthless, he wasn't just protecting the land. He was setting a trap. He was waiting for Luann and Tara to make their move. And when they did, they would find the door wasn't just locked. It was gone. He was forcing their greed out into the open, just like he was forcing Brent's. "You're creating a legal killbox," I whispered. "I am enforcing your grandmother's wishes," he said, his face impassive. "Greed creates vulnerabilities. Autumn, in a boardroom, or in a family, your aunt just exposed hers. That night, back in the quiet safety of my motel room, the dam finally broke. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed and cried. I cried for the job I had loved, for the work that had been stolen. I cried from the sheer burning exhaustion of the fight, but mostly, I cried for my mother. There was a profound, aching relief in finally having someone like Eldon in my corner, someone who didn't just offer sympathy, but offered strategy, someone who saw my value and was willing to deploy resources to defend it. He was protecting me. He was arming me. And that relief made the betrayal from my own mother cut so much deeper. She hadn't asked if I was okay. She hadn't asked if I was eating. She hadn't offered me a place to stay. She had only asked what I had and how she could get her share. My crisis was her opportunity. My pain was her leverage. She valued money, and the ghost of an inheritance she felt she was owed, more than her own daughter. The tears weren't just sad. They were clarifying. They washed away the last lingering thread of filial obligation, the desperate hope that she would one day change. She wouldn't. This is who she was. And as the crying subsided, a cold, clear anger took its place, the same anger that had fueled me in the diner. I was done being a victim, for Brent, for Micah, for my mother. I opened my new, notarized notebook, the one Sienna had digitally filed. I turned to the first blank page after my Phase 2 designs. I picked up my pen. If Brent wanted my work so badly, he could have it, but he would never, ever be able to replicate it. I began to sketch a new chapter, not just an improvement, but a lock, a biological key, a new molecule sequence for the polymer I was using, one that would only activate its full tensile strength when introduced to a proprietary, patent-pending saline solution. Without it, the frame would be brittle, useless, a fail-safe, an anti-copying mechanism. I would give them the lock, but I would keep the key. I worked for hours, the complex chemistry and mechanical diagrams flowing from me with a desperate, beautiful clarity. I was almost done, the sky just beginning to turn a bruised purple, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it, expecting another wheedling text from Luann, but it wasn't. It was an unknown number, a text message. "This is Owen Pike. I know you know I was logged in. You have to believe me. I was forced, Brent threatened to fire me and blacklist me with every recruiting firm in Denver. He's destroying my career. Please meet me. I have something you need. Something he doesn't know exists. Please. I read the message 3 times. Sienna had been right. The weak link had panicked. And now, from the wreckage of Brent's own treachery, an ally I never expected had just emerged. The tension in the room ratcheted up. A wire pulled impossibly tight. This was the break. This was the piece we were missing. Sienna's advice was to meet Owen in the most public place possible, at the most chaotic time. No quiet corners, she'd instructed over the phone. I want you at a center table, midday. He's panicking, which makes him unpredictable. We need witnesses. I chose a bustling, oversized Starbucks downtown, a block from the ArcLight building, at 12:30, the absolute peak of the lunch rush. The air was thick with the smell of burnt coffee and the roar of a dozen conversations. I sat at a small, circular table in the middle of the floor, my back to no one, my senses on high alert. Owen Pike slid into the seat opposite me, and he looked like a ghost. His skin was pale, his eyes were bloodshot and darting around the room, and his hands were trembling so badly he could barely set his messenger bag on the floor. He hadn't just been threatened. He was terrified. "You came," he whispered, not meeting my eyes. He was staring at my hands, at the table, anywhere else. "I'm here, Owen. What's going on?" "He's going to fire me," he said, his voice cracking. "He knows. He must know I was the one who logged in. After your lawyer's letter, he called me into his office. He said if I ever spoke to anyone about the project, he would personally end my career. He said he'd tell everyone I was the one who stole your designs, that he'd had to fire me for gross misconduct. No one will ever hire me." "Why did you do it, Owen? Why log in for him?" "I didn't have a choice," he hissed, finally looking at me, his eyes wide with desperation. "He told me it was a management directive, that your initial files were corrupted and he needed the source images from the lab. He watched me do it. He stood right over my shoulder." "I know," I said quietly. "We saw his reflection in the steel table." Owen's face crumpled. "Oh, God. Then you have to believe me. Autumn, I never wanted any part of this. What did you bring me?" His hands fumbled with the clasp on his bag. He slid a single black USB drive across the table, keeping his palm over it until my hand was there to cover it. "Don't look at it here," he whispered. "What is it?" "It's my insurance policy, the one I never wanted to use," he swallowed, his gaze darting to the barista line and back. A few days after the photo incident, Brent called me on a video chat from his home office. He was furious about something, said the patent lawyers were asking why the digital files didn't perfectly match the new application he'd submitted. He told me to fix it. "What do you mean, fix it?" "He told me to alter the original metadata, to backdate the new CAD files I was building so they would appear older than your first upload. He wanted me to fabricate the timeline." Owen was shaking. I knew he was crossing a line, a bad one. So I ran a screen recorder. The whole conversation. My blood went ice cold. "You recorded him?" He said, "I don't care what the original file says. I'm the team lead. The patent application lists me as primary inventor. You just make the technical files match the application." "Understood. Owen, this is your job. It's all there. His voice, his face, his direct order to falsify data for a patent." He wasn't done. "There's a second file, a forwarded email chain. Brent sent it to me by accident. I think it's from HR, to him. The subject line is Project 54B Urgency, the body text. It says, Brent, legal advises, we must file the patent application by end of week. We need to establish priority before Ms. Long's claims gain any traction or she demands significant compensation. They all knew, HR knew, they weren't just fast-tracking a patent, they were actively trying to file it before I could fight back. He pushed the USB drive an inch closer to me. "I'll testify," he whispered. "I'll give you a sworn affidavit. This is everything. This is the whole case. Just, please, tell your lawyer. I just want immunity. I don't want to be sued. I just want to keep my job." I closed my hand around the drive. It was small and warm. "Sienna, my lawyer, she's not going to sue you. Owen, she's going to protect you." I left the cafe and went straight to Sienna's office. We didn't plug the drive into her system. "Chain of custody," she said, pulling on a pair of latex gloves. She placed the drive in a sealed, numbered evidence bag. "We can't be the ones to access this. If we do, they'll claim we altered it." She made a call. An hour later, a bonded courier arrived and transported the sealed bag to a third-party forensic tech firm Eldon had on retainer. "What now?" I asked. "Now," Sienna said. "The professionals do their work. This firm will create a forensic copy. They will verify the file metadata, the video's creation date, the email headers. They will prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that these files are authentic and unaltered. And when they do, they will send one copy to me and one copy to ArcLight's general counsel, along with a bill for their services." While we waited for the forensics, Sienna sent a paralegal to a different coffee shop to meet Owen. He signed a comprehensive, sworn affidavit detailing everything: the 2:14 a.m. photo session, Brent's supervision, the threats, the video call, the email. It was all notarized and sealed before the end of the day. The blast radius from that evidence landing on the general counsel's desk was immediate. The very next morning, Sienna received a new letter. The tone of arrogant dismissal was gone. It was replaced by an urgent, almost fawning cordiality, in the spirit of collegiality and finding a swift, amicable resolution. ArcLight Therapeutics wishes to invite Ms. Long and her counsel to a confidential, off-the-record mediation. "They're terrified," I said, reading the email over Sienna's shoulder. "They're not terrified," she corrected. "They're embarrassed. They've been caught. Now they want to see how cheaply they can make this go away and bury it under a non-disclosure agreement." The confidential mediation was held in a sterile conference room at a neutral law firm. It was just me, Sienna, and two of ArcLight's senior lawyers. Brent was nowhere to be seen. HR was absent. This was a damage control operation. They were smooth. They called the entire incident a profound and regrettable misunderstanding. They blamed the pressures of a fast-paced RD environment and the overzealous actions of a single manager. Then came the offer. "In recognition of your foundational contributions, Autumn," the lead lawyer said, his smile never reaching his eyes, "ArcLight is prepared to offer you a one-time recognition bonus of $30,000. Furthermore, we will, of course, be adding your name to the patent application as a contributing researcher." "In what position?" Sienna asked, her voice flat. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We believe third position would be appropriate, acknowledging the significant development work done by Mr. Kroll and the senior engineering team. Third position, a $30,000 tip. For my life's work." I felt the blood rush to my face, but before I could speak, Sienna closed her leather portfolio with a quiet snap. "My client rejects your offer," she said. The lawyers looked stunned. They had clearly expected me to be grateful. "Our counter-offer is simple, and it is non-negotiable," Sienna continued, her voice like ice. "One Ms. Long is listed as primary inventor on this patent and all associated global filings. 2 ArcLight will issue a formal, written retraction of the disciplinary warning from HR, to be countersigned by the CEO. 3 You will negotiate a new, separate contract with Ms. Long for revenue sharing based on a standard industry royalty percentage for this product line." The lead lawyer actually laughed. That's not going to happen, Ms. Mora. We are prepared to be generous, but we are not going to hand over the keys to the kingdom." "Then we are done here," Sienna said, standing up. "We will see you at the internal hearing, and subsequently, in federal court." We walked out. Brent's retaliation came less than 24 hours later. He had realized he couldn't win on the facts, so he was creating new ones. An email from HR, CCing the general counsel, landed in my inbox. Subject follow-up performance improvement plan. It was a work of fiction, a meticulously fabricated document, backdated with management observations from the past 6 weeks. It cited missed deadlines for projects I had been removed from, lack of engagement in meetings I had been explicitly uninvited to, a pattern of negativity and insubordination affecting team morale. It was the paper trail. They were manufacturing cause to fire me, making it look unrelated to the patent dispute. I forwarded it to Sienna. Her response was a ballistic missile. She immediately filed for an emergency injunction and a temporary restraining order under the state's Whistleblower Protection Act. Her filing was a masterpiece. It laid out the timeline, the initial complaint, the mediation, the failed offer, and then, less than 1 day later, the sudden appearance of a fraudulent performance improvement plan. A judge read it and, before the end of the day, granted a temporary protective order. ArcLight was legally barred from firing, disciplining, or in any way altering my employment status until the internal hearing was complete. Brent had been muzzled by a court order. That evening, Eldon summoned me, not to the diner, but to the Northline Holdings offices. It was the first time I'd been inside. It was quiet, opulent, and smelled of old leather and floor wax. "You've done well," he said, standing by a large window overlooking the city lights. "You have them legally cornered. Sienna has built a perfect cage." "But they're still not budging on authorship," I said, frustrated. "They'll drag this out in court for years. I'll be broke long before we ever see a trial." "They believe this is a legal dispute," Eldon said, turning from the window. "They think their only vulnerability is a lawsuit. They've forgotten this is also a business. It's time to open the envelope." He walked to his desk and picked up the thick manila file he had given me that first night at the gas station, the one I had almost forgotten about. Rhodes Family Trust, Northline Holdings. He untied the string and opened it. It wasn't just research. It was a stack of dense, legal documents, share certificates, trust agreements. At the very top was a single, notarized document, proxy authorization. Northline Holdings, Eldon explained, owns just under 3% of ArcLight Therapeutics voting stock. It's a small stake, but not an insignificant one. It's not enough to control the board, but it's more than enough to be heard. He slid the top document across the polished mahogany desk. "This document is a formal assignment of proxy. It transfers the full voting rights of Northline's entire share block, from the trust to you, Autumn Long, as its designated representative." I stared at the signature, his signature. I'm a shareholder, a voting shareholder. "For the purposes of this meeting, you are," he said. "The internal hearing is procedure. This is power. Sienna has already filed the paperwork. We are formally exercising our shareholder right to call for an emergency meeting of minority shareholders, to be held concurrently with the internal hearing. The agenda is not Ms. Long's complaint. The agenda," he smiled, "is a formal inquiry into RD ethics, data integrity, and management oversight and its potential risk to shareholder value. We are taking this out of HR's hands and putting it directly in front of the money." My head was spinning. This was a corporate coup. Just as I was processing this, my phone, silent on the desk, lit up, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey," a moment later, the same number was calling. I looked at Eldon, confused. He nodded. I answered, putting it on speaker. "Hello. Autumn, hey, it's Micah?" My stomach turned to lead. "What do you want?" "Micah. Hey, look, I know things ended weird," he stammered, his voice falsely jovial. I was just talking to your mom. She's really, really worried about you. She said you're mixed up with some rich old guy. Your grandfather? She said he's, I don't know, dangerous or something." I looked at Eldon. His face was granite. "Micah, what do you want?" She's just worried he's setting you up. You know, taking advantage. She just wants to know what he's planning. She said if you just tell me what's going on, I can explain it to her. I can help. I'm on your side. Autumn, I always have been. He was a pawn. A stupid, transparent pawn. Tara, having failed to get to me, had weaponized my feckless ex-boyfriend to spy on me. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp, ugly sound. Goodbye, Micah. I hung up and, without a moment's hesitation, blocked his number. Then I blocked Tara's. Then I blocked Luann's. The last thread was cut. I looked at Eldon. They're desperate. So are we, he said. The meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. That night, I sat in the quiet of my motel room. The television was off. The city was a distant hum. It felt like the night before a battle. The final, deep breath before the charge. I took out my new, notarized notebook, the one with the anti-copying mechanism sketched in the back. I turned to the last blank page and wrote 3 words. My goals for tomorrow. I wrote 1, truth. They will not call me a liar. They will not call Owen a liar. They will publicly admit what Brent Kroll did. 2, credit, my name, primary inventor, on every document, every schematic, every press release, and every product that leaves the line. 3, deterrence. This can never happen again. They will not just apologize. They will establish new, binding rules. They will learn that stealing from their own people is, as Eldon would say, a bad business decision. It will be more expensive than telling the truth. I closed the book. I was no longer the girl sleeping in her car. I was no longer just a junior specialist. I was Autumn Rhodes Long, and tomorrow, I was a voting shareholder. The Arclight boardroom was a stage for intimidation. It was on the top floor, a cavern of dark mahogany, smoked glass, and acres of polished black granite that reflected the Denver skyline. At the head of the table sat Mark Theron, the CEO, flanked by the general counsel, Lynn, and the trembling head of HR. Brent Kroll was there, seated farther down, looking infuriatingly smug. He was whispering to another executive, and they both laughed, and then the executive assistant opened the door. Ms. Long, Ms. Mora, and Mr. Rhodes. The laughter died instantly. Every head swiveled. The room, which had been buzzing with low, confident chatter, fell utterly silent. They were expecting a disciplined employee and her lawyer. They were not expecting Eldon Rhodes. I saw Brent's smirk vanish, replaced by a flicker of pure, unadulterated panic. The general counsel's pen stopped moving. Mark Theron, the CEO, composed himself first, standing up, his hands resting on the table. His smile was a thin plastic veneer. Mr. Rhodes, this is an unexpected honor. We weren't aware you had a personal stake in what is, essentially, an internal HR grievance. Eldon walked calmly to the 3 empty chairs we'd been assigned, placing his leather briefcase on the floor. I have a stake in every asset Northline Holdings maintains, Mr. Theron, and my asset is being exposed to significant legal risk by your team. He nodded to me. But you are correct on one point. This is Ms. Long's hearing. We are here as her counsel, and as a concerned shareholder. We sat. The air in the room was no longer just tense. It was electric. I was no longer the junior specialist they intended to fire. I was a problem they hadn't anticipated. Lynn, the general counsel, tried to regain control, opening a binder. Well, as this is an internal review, we will hear Ms. Long's statement, and then the management team will. Sienna cut her off. Her voice was not loud, but it sliced through the room like a scalpel. We can dispense with the script. Counsel, this is not a grievance hearing. We are here to present the findings of our own investigation, which confirms felony-level misconduct, intellectual property theft, and a coordinated conspiracy to commit fraud, originating from your senior management and implicating your HR department. A nervous cough came from someone at the end of the table. My client has invoked her rights as a whistleblower, Sienna continued, plugging a simple USB drive into the port at the center of the table. The main presentation screen flickered to life. We are simply here to present the evidence you already possess. Let's begin with the timeline. For the next 10 minutes, Sienna dismantled them. She was cold, factual, and utterly brutal. She never raised her voice. She simply presented the exhibits, one by one. Exhibit A, she said. The screen showed the server logs. My client's original concept file, uploaded 6 months ago. Exhibit B, the high-resolution photo of my notebook, taken at 2:14 in the morning. Stolen personal property, photographed in your own lab. Exhibit C, the enhanced image of the reflection in the steel table. Brent's red management badge was blurry, but unmistakable. Brent stared at the screen, his face turning a blotchy, furious red. Exhibit D, Owen Pike's sworn affidavit, detailing the coercion. Exhibit E, the formal litigation hold letter Sienna had sent to Lynn's office, which you received, Sienna noted, on March 3rd. Exhibit F, the backdated, fraudulent performance improvement plan, issued on March 5th. A clear, actionable, and frankly amateurish act of illegal retaliation in direct violation of the preservation order. The room was silent. The other minority shareholders, the ones I didn't recognize, were leaning forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to cold anger. And finally, Sienna said, Exhibit G, the intent. She played the video. The boardroom was filled with Brent Kroll's voice, captured by Owen's screen recorder. I don't care what the original file says. I'm the team lead. The patent application lists me as primary inventor. You just make the technical files match the application. Understood. Owen. She stopped the video and immediately switched to the final slide, the HR email. File the patent application by end of week, before Ms. Long's claims gain any traction. The silence that followed was deafening. It was absolute. The CEO was staring at the screen, his jaw muscles working. The head of HR was white as a sheet, looking at her own hands. Lynn, the general counsel, was the first to speak. Her voice was strained, high-pitched. We will require a 15-minute recess to consult. Granted, Sienna said. Theron, Lynn, and the HR head scrambled out of the room, a visible wave of panic rolling off them. Brent Kroll remained frozen in his chair, a statue of pure fury. Mr. Kroll, Theron barked from the doorway. Now! Brent stood so violently, his chair screeched on the floor and nearly fell over. He shot me a look of such concentrated hatred I almost flinched. Then he stormed out. When they returned, the entire mood had changed. The pretense of authority was gone. This was damage control. Ms. Long, Autumn, Theron said, his voice slick with false sincerity. It appears there have been significant, deeply regrettable actions taken by individuals, far outside the bounds of ArcLight policy. We are appalled. We will be taking this under immediate and serious review. He was stalling, trying to bury it. A review is no longer sufficient. Mr. Theron, Sienna said, my client has a formal offer of resolution. She will present it herself. This was it. I felt Eldon's presence beside me, a solid wall of support. I looked at the CEO, my heart hammering, but my voice came out clear and steady. I require 3 things, I said. 1, I am named primary inventor on this patent and all associated filings, non-negotiable. 2, I continued, ArcLight will negotiate a separate licensing and royalty contract with me. My royalty rate will be commensurate with that of an independent inventor, not an employee. And 3, Brent Kroll is terminated for cause, and the retaliatory HR warning is publicly rescinded by your office. Theron's eyes widened. He looked at Lynn, who just shook her head slightly, as if to say, this is madness. Autumn, Theron said, trying the reasonable father tone. Those are extraordinary demands. We are prepared to offer a significant bonus for your contributions. We will, of course, add your name to the patent, but a royalty termination of a senior manager that requires a full board review. It takes time. You don't have time, Eldon Rhodes said. It was the first time he had spoken. His voice, quiet and gravelly, commanded the room. Mr. Rhodes, Lynn snapped. This is an internal hearing. Your shareholder status does not grant you. It is, Eldon interrupted. No longer an internal hearing. As of my filing yesterday, this is now an emergency meeting of minority shareholders, called to address a clear and present threat to shareholder value, namely, your management team's conspiracy to commit fraud. The color drained from Theron's face. I am using the full voting rights of Northline Holdings, Eldon said, to table a formal resolution. This resolution demands one, an immediate freeze on all patent filings related to this project. 2. The appointment of an independent, external rapporteur to investigate this firm's RD ethics. And 3. That this board must respond to Ms. Long's 3 demands, publicly, within 72 hours. That's absurd, Lynn shot back. You don't have the votes to force a binding resolution. Mr. Rhodes, you're bluffing. Am I? Eldon asked, unconcerned. A new voice piped up from the end of the table, a man in a sharp, expensive suit who had been watching the entire exchange with a hawk's intensity. David Chen, Skylark Ventures, he said, holding up a hand. We hold 4%, Mr. Theron. We also received Ms. Mora's evidence packet last night. We find it convincing. The actions of your RD head don't just invite litigation. They jeopardize the entire product line. Skylark Ventures formally seconds Mr. Rhodes's resolution. If the video had been a bomb, this was the shockwave. Theron looked at Chen, utterly betrayed. Skylark was one of their key venture capital partners. Now, wait just a minute. Theron stammered. Brent Kroll suddenly appeared in the doorway, his face purple. This is bullshit. It's a setup. You're just going to let this junior? Mr. Kroll, Theron snapped. Get out. No, you're sacrificing me. She faked that video, that little bitch. Security, Eldon said, his voice low and dangerous. A guard stepped in and physically escorted a swearing, apoplectic Brent Kroll down the hall. The room was in chaos. Sienna turned to the head of HR. Can you confirm, for the record, that you sent the email advising a rush to file? The woman looked at the table, then at Lynn, then back at the table. I would have to check my records. I don't recall that specific exchange. She was terrified of perjuring herself. They had all broken. The resolution passed. The minority shareholders, led by Eldon and Skylark, had forced the board's hand. Lynn, her voice trembling with rage, read the result. An independent rapporteur will be appointed. A binding recommendation will be issued within 72 hours. The clock was ticking. We stood. Sienna packed her laptop. Eldon nodded once, curtly, to the stunned board. We walked out, leaving the smoking wreckage of their strategy behind us. In the elevator, I finally let out the breath I felt I'd been holding for a month. It's done. No, Eldon said, watching the floor numbers light up. It's not. They're cornered. A cornered animal is the most dangerous. They will look for another way to attack. Be ready. I was ready for them. I was ready for anything. I had faced them down and won. But as we stepped into the atrium, my phone, which I had left on, vibrated. An encrypted message from an unknown number. I opened it. The message was 5 words long. Watch your mother. They're targeting Eldon. I froze. They hadn't just lost. They had counterattacked. And they had just opened a new front in the war. One I never saw coming. They were going after Eldon, and they were using my family to do it. I showed Eldon the anonymous text message in the elevator. He read the 5 words. Watch your mother. They're targeting Eldon. And his face didn't change, but a cold, hard stillness settled over him. So, he said, as the elevator doors opened into the atrium, the board has chosen its counter-strategy. Despicable, but predictable. They couldn't win on the facts. So they're searching for leverage. They're looking for character flaws. They're targeting you, I said, a new dread creeping in. How? By attacking my credibility as a fiduciary, Eldon said, walking briskly toward the exit. And the easiest way to do that is to find a disgruntled family member to claim I am unstable, or vindictive, or mismanaging the trust. They are looking for your mother. He was right. Arclight's lawyers, having been humiliated in the boardroom, were now digging into the one weakness they had my family. They were looking for Tara and Luann. The proof arrived on his doorstep 2 days later. I was at Eldon's home, a large, quiet house in a gated neighborhood, working with him to draft our official response to the independent rapporteur, when his housekeeper announced he had visitors, my mother and my Aunt Luann. They hadn't called. They had just appeared. Eldon nodded, unfazed. Show them into the study, Helen, and bring coffee. He looked at me. Stay. You are no longer a child. Autumn, you are a partner in this. You will sit, and you will listen, and you will not say a word. I sat in a leather wingback chair near the fireplace, my notebook in my lap, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm. They swept in, a whirlwind of cheap perfume and palpable grievance. Tara, my mother, was dressed in what she clearly thought was power broker attire, a sharp-shouldered blazer and heels. Luann trailed behind her, clutching an oversized designer knockoff purse. Well, Eldon, Tara started, refusing to sit. You've been busy. Tara, Luann, Eldon said, his voice calm, gesturing to the chairs opposite his desk. This is a surprise. Is it? Tara shot back. We hear you're making moves, big public moves. We hear you're backing her. She jerked her chin at me, as if I were a stranger. In some ridiculous lawsuit, spending trust money to attack a public company? I am protecting a trust asset, Eldon said simply. Ms. Long's intellectual property, which has value. Luann, seeing her opening, chimed in, her voice wheedling. That's just it, Eldon. If you're finally distributing assets, if you're giving things to Autumn, well, it's only fair that we get our equal share. We are your daughters, too. Tara has been so loyal, waiting all these years. I almost choked. Loyal Eldon leaned back in his chair. I am not distributing assets. Luann, I am paying for a lawyer, just as I paid for your last divorce, if you recall. Luann flushed. Tara slammed her hand on his desk. Don't you play games with us. We know what you're doing. You're trying to cut us out, just like you always have. You're giving her everything. If I give Autumn anything, Eldon said, his voice dropping, it is because she has earned it through her own merit, a concept you both seem to find confusing. We want our share, Tara demanded. Whatever you're giving her, we get the same, an equal portion, or we'll talk to those lawyers from her work. We'll tell them how you've treated us, how you've mismanaged our mother's money, how you're unstable. There it was, the Arclight strategy, right on cue. They had found their leverage. Eldon didn't raise his voice. He didn't get angry. He simply opened a drawer in his desk and took out a single, bound document. He slid it across the mahogany. You've both seen your mother's will, he said, but you clearly skimmed the section on the bylaws of the Rhodes Family Trust, specifically, the discretionary distributions. Please, read Article 4, Section B. Tara snatched the paper and read it aloud, her voice dripping with contempt. Discretionary distributions may be made to any beneficiary, provided said beneficiary demonstrates ethical conduct and is not engaged in active threats, coercion, legal intimidation, or attempts to embezzle or defraud the trust or its administrator. Her voice trailed off. She looked up, her eyes wide with fury. It's an ethics clause, Eldon said, his voice gentle. Your mother was a brilliant woman. She knew you. You are demanding money from the trust while threatening to sue the trust if you don't get it. You are, in real time, voiding the very clause that would allow me to give it to you. So, no, you will not get an equal share. You will get nothing. This is a trick, Luann shrieked. You wrote this? Your mother wrote this, Eldon said. And I have enforced it, to the letter, for 25 years. Tara was shaking, her face a mask of incandescent rage. You old bastard. You think you've won. You think you're so smart. We don't need your dirty money. We have our own deal. A better deal. Tara, shut up, Luann hissed, tugging on her sister's sleeve. No, he needs to hear this. We have an offer, a cash offer for that useless piece of land up in Boulder, the one you're preserving. My blood went cold. The anonymous text message, Luann, the real estate wave. Eldon remained perfectly still. You cannot sell land that you do not own, Tara. We found a buyer, she spat, completely unhinged. A very motivated partner. He's a developer. He's going to get the zoning changed, and he's willing to pay a finder's fee for our services in persuading you. And who? Eldon asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Is this motivated buyer a partner of that man from Autumn's work? Luann blurted out, triumphant. The one she's suing Mr. Kroll? Tara shot Luann a look that could kill. But the words were out. I stopped breathing. I stood up, the notebook falling from my lap and hitting the floor with a dull thud. They didn't just know. They were in on it. My mother. My own mother was actively colluding with a partner of Brent Kroll, the man who had stolen my future to sell off a piece of my grandmother's legacy, all in exchange for a finder's fee paid under the table. This wasn't just greed. This was treason. She was trying to sabotage my legal case by giving my opponent leverage against my grandfather. Get out, I whispered, my voice shaking. You stay out of this, Autumn, Tara snarled. Get out of his house. Eldon raised a hand. Autumn, sit. Thank you. Tara, you've been extremely helpful. What? Tara looked confused, her rage momentarily short-circuiting. This meeting has been, as you know, about a sensitive legal and financial matter concerning the trust, Eldon said, his tone conversational. He gestured to the speakerphone on his desk, which had been dark the entire time. As such, my legal counsel has been present and recording this entire conversation. Your threats, your demands for money, and your admission of a conspiracy to defraud the trust with Mr. Kroll's partner have all been logged. Legally, the color drained from my mother's face. Luann looked like she was going to be sick. Your services in this matter, Eldon continued, are known as conspiracy, and the finder's fee is known as a bribe. I believe we are done here. If you are not off this property in 60 seconds, I will have you removed for trespassing. They left. They didn't slam the door. They just vanished, like ghosts caught in a searchlight. I sank back into the chair, my entire body trembling. She was helping him. She was helping Brent. She was helping herself, Eldon said, his voice heavy with a weariness I'd never heard before. Brent's partner was just a means to an end, a way to get the money she's always felt she was owed. I'm done, I said, the words tasting like poison. I'm cutting her off. Forever. I'll change my name. You will be calm, Eldon said. This is not the time for emotion. This is the time for strategy. He called Sienna and put her on speaker. I told her what happened. I told her what my mother had admitted. Sienna was silent for a long moment. God, she finally said. Okay, it's a gift. But Eldon's right. Autumn, you can't act on it. Not yet. We have the 72-hour clock running with ArcLight. The rapporteur's report is everything. If you suddenly file a restraining order against your mother or initiate a new lawsuit, ArcLight's lawyers will use it. They'll claim the entire case is just a toxic family feud. They'll use your personal pain to discredit our professional case. We have to wait. Let the ArcLight knot close first. Then, we deal with Tara. She was right. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. But I agreed. I would wait. Tara, however, did not. Having been utterly defeated in person, she retreated to the only battlefield she had left, the family grapevine. The smear campaign began. Calls were made to cousins I hadn't seen in a decade, to distant aunts, to anyone who would listen. The narrative was thick and poisonous. Autumn was a gold digger. She had abandoned her poor, struggling mother. She had shacked up with the rich old man who tore the family apart. And now she was trying to steal everyone's inheritance. But the rumor backfired. Spectacularly. My mother, in her rage, had forgotten that Luann, in her greed, had already been calling those same relatives for weeks, crowing about the big land deal she was putting together. The family members were confused. The stories didn't line up. How could Autumn be stealing all the money if Luann and Tara were the ones about to get a massive payout and, as one particularly sharp cousin from Phoenix pointed out, why was the buyer a partner with Brent Kroll? The exact same man Autumn was in a legal dispute with. The questions turned. The suspicion shifted. The gossip mill, for the first time in my life, was not aimed at me. It was aimed squarely at my mother. Luann, predictably, cracked under the pressure. A new text message appeared on my phone. It was from my aunt, Autumn Honey. I'm so sorry. Tara is out of control. She forced me to go to Eldon's. I never wanted to. It was all her, that land deal. I didn't know he was tied to your work. I swear, listen, I can help you. I can tell everyone the truth about what Tara's doing. But I'm in a little trouble. If you could just ask Eldon for a small advance, a kind of fee for my silence, just to help me get on my feet. I'll be on your side completely. A request for hush money. My own aunt. I took a screenshot. I forwarded it to Sienna with no comment. Sienna simply replied, saved. Thank you. That evening, the 72-hour deadline expired. The independent rapporteur's report was delivered to the board, to Sienna, and to Eldon. It was a total vindication. It validated every claim. It confirmed the timeline, the IP theft, and the illegal retaliation. It recommended all of my demands' primary inventor status, the termination of Brent Kroll, and the immediate negotiation of a royalty contract. We won, I breathed, reading the executive summary in Eldon's study. It's over. Eldon shook his head, reading a separate email that had just come in from the Arclight General Counsel. No, they're stalling. How the report is binding. They're using a loophole, he said, his voice tight. They accept the rapporteur's findings, but they are delaying the implementation of the recommendations. They are tabling the final vote until the annual shareholders' meeting. When is that? 3 weeks, he said. They're trying to bury it, I shouted. They're hoping I'll run out of money, that I'll just give up. They are, Eldon agreed. They think a public forum is too risky for us. They think we'll want to settle quietly before then. He looked at me, a strange, calculating light in his eyes. Why? I asked him, the frustration and exhaustion overwhelming me. Why is my mother like this? Why is this happening? He was quiet for a long time, staring into the cold fireplace. Because of me, he said. I waited. I told you I refused to fund your mother's boyfriend's startup, he said. That was the truth, but it was not the whole truth. I didn't just refuse. I had him investigated. He looked at me, his face etched with a regret so old it was part of his bone structure. The man was a con artist. Worse, he was physically abusive to her. She was terrified of him, and she was in love with him. I didn't handle it with compassion. I handled it like a business problem. I proved the man was a fraud, and I had him removed. I thought I was protecting her. You were protecting her, I whispered. No, he said, shaking his head. I was managing a volatile asset. I took away her agency. I treated her like a child, like a fool, and she never, ever forgave me for it. Not for losing the man, but for the method, for the coldness of it. She bonded with her grievance. It's been her entire identity for 25 years. He looked at me, his gaze clear. I was a good businessman, Autumn, but I was not a good father. I was flawed. I am still flawed, but I am trying to make amends. I finally understood. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't a white knight. He was a man who saw the world in terms of strategy and leverage, and he had made a terrible mistake with his daughter, and now he was correcting it with me. He wasn't managing me. He was arming me. He was giving me the proxy, the lawyer, the strategy. He was giving me the agency he had stolen from my mother. "They're delaying until the annual meeting," I said, the clarity returning. "They think we'll be afraid of a public spectacle." "They're right to," Eldon said. "It's a huge risk. The entire business press will be there. We could lose control of the narrative." "Good," I said, the fire catching in my chest. "Let them be there. Let's do it in front of everyone. I'm tired of back rooms, and secret hearings, and whispers. Let's end this in the brightest light possible." A slow smile spread across Eldon's face. "The annual shareholders' meeting it is," he said. "We will not just ask for a vote. We will demand the stage." The 3 weeks leading up to the annual shareholders' meeting were not a period of calm. They were a cold war fought in the open. ArcLight, having delayed the implementation of the rapporteur's report, acted as if the findings were merely advisory. They were betting that by the time the meeting arrived, the momentum would be gone, and they could bury the vote in a pile of procedural nonsense. They underestimated us. It was not a 3-week pause. It was a 3-week assembly of an arsenal. Sienna moved first, escalating the fight beyond ArcLight's boardroom. She finalized a comprehensive complaint with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. It was a formal petition to halt and reassign the patent for the Kroll frame, citing fraudulent authorship. She attached the independent rapporteur's full report, Owen's sworn affidavit, and the damning video of Brent ordering the falsification of data. This filing was not confidential. It was a public record. This, in turn, fueled the second front, the media. Either Sienna or Eldon, I never asked which, ensured a copy of that public filing landed on the desk of a key investigative reporter at the Denver Post. The resulting story was a small, contained explosion on the front page of the business section. ArcLight Therapeutics faces RD fraud allegations. Local inventor claims stolen patent. The article was cautious, but the narrative was set a young female inventor, David, versus a multi-million-dollar corporation. Goliath, ArcLight stock, which had been stable, dipped 2 points in overnight trading. The board was officially bleeding money, while the media applied external pressure. Sienna solidified our internal alliances. Owen Pike was our most vulnerable asset. She met with him and finalized a witness protection agreement, funded entirely by a Northline Holdings contingency fund. He would formally resign from ArcLight 2 days before the meeting, citing a hostile work environment. In exchange for his unrestricted, truthful testimony, he was guaranteed full legal protection and a new, better-paying contract to join a biomechanical research incubator that Eldon, coincidentally, funded. Owen, finally free from Brent's threats, was no longer a panicked victim. He was a motivated, credible witness. Skylark Ventures, the venture capital firm that had seconded Eldon's motion, began its own attack. David Chen, their representative, prepared a formal statement for the press. It was to be released 1 hour before the shareholder meeting. It stated that Skylark was deeply concerned by the verified findings of the independent ethics rapporteur and would be publicly advocating for a change in RD leadership to restore shareholder confidence. It was a direct, public vote of no confidence in the CEO's ability to manage his own team. ArcLight, now besieged from the legal media and investor fronts, finally panicked. Their first countermove was laughably desperate. A letter arrived from their general counsel, this time accusing me of violating my non-disclosure agreement. They claimed that by sharing confidential project data with Eldon Rhodes, I had committed a fire-able offense. Sienna's response was a single page of legal ice. She informed them that, first, Mr. Rhodes, as a significant shareholder, possessed the fiduciary right to investigate any credible evidence of fraud that threatened the value of his own investment, and second, that all core evidence was provided by a legally protected whistleblower, rendering their NDA claims moot in a fraud investigation. She finished by noting that this transparently retaliatory accusation had been added to our pending legal complaint. The accusation vanished. They never mentioned it again. Their second attempt was far more dangerous. It came 2 days before the meeting. An urgent summons from ArcLight's general counsel for a final good faith mediation. I sat with Sienna and Eldon in Sienna's glass-walled conference room as she took the video call. The lawyer on the screen was not the one from the hearing. This was their top litigator, a man with a silver-haired, statesman-like aura. He didn't threaten, he soothed. "Ms. Long, Autumn," he started, his voice a warm baritone. "We have all allowed this to escalate. This has become a matter of personalities, not business. My clients are prepared to make a final, substantial offer to acknowledge your foundational work and to, frankly, make this go away, so we can all get back to what we do best." He laid it out, a single, tax-free payment of $500,000, a new, symbolic title, Chief Innovation Fellow, with a salary increase, though I would be transferred to the Boston office, and he added, they would agree to a royalty of 3% on the Kroll frame. It was a staggering amount of money. It was a life-changing sum. It was everything, and more, than I could have ever imagined. I looked at Eldon. His face was perfectly neutral. He was leaving this to me. "And the conditions?" Sienna asked, her voice flat. "Standard, for a resolution of this magnitude," the lawyer said, smiling genially. "A permanent, mutual non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. The rapporteur's findings are sealed, permanently. All pending litigation and complaints are withdrawn. Ms. Long resigns from ArcLight, effective immediately, and Mr. Kroll will be reassigned to the Austin campus." There it was. They wanted to buy my silence. They wanted to bury the truth. They wanted to pay me $500,000 to let Brent Kroll keep his job and to let the company pretend this never happened. They wanted me to sign my name to a lie. I thought about the girl in the car. I thought about Owen, who had risked his career. I thought about my notebook. "Autumn," Sienna asked quietly. "No," I said. The lawyer's smile faltered. I beg your pardon." "No," I said, my voice clear and ringing in the quiet room. "I am not for sale. The offer is rejected. I don't want your money. I want public acknowledgement. I want my name, and I want his termination. We will see you at the meeting." Before he could respond, I reached over and ended the call. My hands were shaking. "I just turned down $500,000, I whispered, half to myself. "I think I'm going to be sick." "You are not," Eldon said, a slow, proud smile spreading across his face. "You are principled, and more importantly, you are correct. It was a bribe. They just showed their last, weakest hand. They believe their only vulnerability is this lawsuit. They're wrong." He reached into his worn leather briefcase and pulled out a second manila file. It was thinner than the first one he had given me, but it felt 1,000 times heavier. "I have been holding this in reserve," he said. "They believe this is a public relations battle. They have forgotten that this is a financial one. This," he slid the file onto the conference table, "is the ace." I opened it. It wasn't a proxy. It was a loan agreement, a massive, dense document. "ArcLight Therapeutics is a high-growth company," Eldon explained. "They operate on significant leverage. This is their primary capital line of credit, a 10-year, $90 million loan from First Boulder Commercial Bank." How do you have this?" "I sit on the board of First Boulder's parent holding company," Eldon said simply. "I am intimately familiar with their major covenants, and this one," he tapped a single paragraph on page 42, "is my favorite." I leaned in and read the highlighted text. "Section 9 ESG Covenant. Borrower, ArcLight Therapeutics covenants that it will maintain the highest standards of environmental, social, and governance ethics. Any verified, uncorrected instance of corporate malfeasance, fraud, or gross ethical misconduct shall constitute a technical default upon review by lender." My breath caught. A default. A technical default, Eldon confirmed, which, at the bank's sole discretion, gives them the right to call the loan, to demand immediate repayment of the entire $90 million principal. It would bankrupt them. This wasn't a weapon, it was a nuclear bomb. The bank, of course, does not want to bankrupt a client, Eldon continued. But the independent rapporteur's report, which I already forwarded to the bank's president, is a verified, uncorrected instance of fraud. The bank is now exposed. It has a fiduciary duty to protect its shareholders from ArcLight's malfeasance. They will have a senior representative at that meeting tomorrow, not as a shareholder, but as the primary creditor. He slid a second document from the file, a letter, addressed to him. The bank's representative will be there to observe, but they have given me, as the convening shareholder of the ethics inquiry, formal authorization to speak on their behalf, to inform the board, publicly, that the bank is reviewing its options under Section 9. Every piece locked into place. Sienna's legal challenge had them boxed in. Skylark's investor revolt was attacking their leadership. The media was attacking their reputation. And now, Eldon was holding the financial guillotine. They think they are coming to a shareholder vote tomorrow, Eldon said, his eyes cold. They are wrong. They are coming to an unconditional surrender. You are not asking them for your terms. Autumn, you are telling them what they will be. All the arrows were pointing to the center of the target. All that was left was to let them fly. That night, as I was packing my few belongings from the motel room, ready to check out for good, my phone buzzed. A new number, but I knew who it was. My mother. Autumn, I know what you're doing. You're going to embarrass this family in public. You need to stop. That Brent Kroll is a snake. I get it. I can handle him. I have a contact. We can make this go away quietly for you. Just stop this public meeting. It's not too late. Call me. It was the most pathetic, twisted, desperate attempt at control I had ever seen. After conspiring with his partners, she was now offering to handle him for me, a backroom deal, the only currency she understood. I typed one reply. I don't need backroom deals. I blocked her number for the last time. The night before the meeting, I sat in the quiet of the room. I took out my notarized black notebook, the one with the Phase 2 designs and the anti-copying mechanism. I turned to the final, empty page. I picked up my pen. I wrote my name, Autumn Rhodes Long. I wrote the date, and as I closed the cover, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't just trusting my work. I was trusting my name. I was ready. The annual shareholders' meeting was held in the grand ballroom of the Brown Palace Hotel. It was a sea of dark suits, bright lights, and tension. The press, smelling blood after the Denver Post article, had turned out in force, their cameras forming a wall at the back of the room. The air was thick with the scent of expensive coffee and corporate anxiety. Mark Theron, ArcLight's CEO, was on stage, his face a mask of practiced confidence. He was clicking through his presentation, his voice a smooth baritone as he detailed fourth-quarter projections and supply chain optimizations. He was rushing. He finally reached the slide titled RD Innovations. He spent less than 20 seconds on it. And our flagship product, the Kroll frame, remains on an accelerated timeline for market release, which we project will capture a significant share of the orthopedic recovery sector. He clicked again, moving on to European market penetration. I stood up, my chair scraped quietly, but in the hush of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. I held up the white card Eldon had given me. "Mr. Chairman," I said, my voice clear and amplified by the table microphones. Theron stopped mid-sentence. He squinted into the audience, his smile faltering. "We have a formal Q&A session scheduled for 11 o'clock. Ms. "I am not here for the Q&A, I said. My voice was trembling, but I didn't care. "I am Autumn Long, and I am the designated proxy for Northline Holdings, a voting shareholder. I am exercising my right under Corporate Bylaw 7.2 to address the board regarding a matter of immediate and material risk to shareholder value. Specifically, The fraudulent patent application for the Kroll frame. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. The press cameras at the back whirred, their red recording lights blinking on. Eldon and Sienna rose slowly, standing on either side of me. The chairman of the board, a severe-looking man named Prentice, looked at Theron, then at me. "The shareholder is recognized. You have 5 minutes. Ms. Long." "Thank you," I said. I looked directly at the board. "I am the primary inventor of the device you are calling the Kroll frame. 6 months ago, I submitted my original research to your R&D portal. 4 weeks ago, my manager, Brent Kroll, stole my private, unpublished notebooks from my desk, had them photographed in your lab at 2:14 in the morning, and used a junior engineer's login to cover his tracks. He then filed a patent application for my work, listing himself as the primary inventor. When I objected, he and your HR department created a fraudulent performance review to fire me for cause. These are the findings of the independent rapporteur you yourselves appointed." I took a breath. "I am not here to make an accusation. I am here to present the undisputed facts. My counsel, Ms. Mora, will provide the summary." I sat. Sienna stepped forward. "We have already provided the full verified evidence packet to the board," she said, her voice sharp and cold. "But for the benefit of all shareholders, let's review the highlights." The main screen above Theron's head flickered, replacing his market projections with Exhibit A, the server logs, then Exhibit B, the high-resolution photo of my notebook, then Exhibit C, the enhanced reflection of Brent's red badge. "The rapporteur," Sienna continued, "also took a sworn affidavit from the junior engineer, Mr. Kroll coerced. That engineer, Mr. Owen Pike, has resigned from Arclight and is here today." Sienna gestured to the aisle. Owen stood up. He looked pale, but his voice was firm. "Mr. Pike, did Brent Kroll order you to photograph Ms. Long's notebook at 2:14 in the morning?" "Yes, ma'am," Owen said. "He stood right over my shoulder while I did it." The room was buzzing. A current employee, testifying against senior management in an open meeting, I saw Brent leap to his feet. "Objection. This is a circus. This is inadmissible." "Mr. Kroll, sit down," the chairman barked. "But we have more than Mr. Pike's word," Sienna said, ignoring Brent completely. She nodded to the AV booth. "Please play Exhibit G." The ballroom went silent. The screen lit up, and there was Brent Kroll's face, on the video call, his voice echoing through the hotel's sound system. "I don't care what the original file says. I'm the team lead. The patent application lists me as primary inventor. You just make the technical files match the application. Understood. Owen." A collective gasp. The press cameras were flashing, a strobe effect capturing the stunned, furious faces of the board members. Mark Theron looked like he had been physically struck. Before he could recover, a man in the third row stood up. He was older, with a quiet authority, and he was not on the executive team. "Mr. Chairman," he said, his voice a dry, unimpressed monotone. "My name is Arthur Vance. I am a senior vice president at First Boulder Commercial Bank." The tension in the room ratcheted up. This wasn't just a shareholder. This was their creditor. "We have also been made aware of the rapporteur's verified findings." Mr. Vance continued, "We are disturbed. We wish to formally remind the board that Arclight's $90 million capital loan is bound by the ESG covenants in Section 9. Verified. Uncorrected corporate fraud constitutes a technical default." He let those words hang in the air. "The bank," he finished, "is now formally reviewing all of its options." This was Eldon's nuclear option. The threat wasn't just a lawsuit. It was bankruptcy. The board members were no longer just embarrassed. They were terrified, as if on cue. David Chen of Skylark Ventures stood up. "Mr. Chairman, given this existential threat, Skylark Ventures moves for an immediate vote on the resolution proposed by Northline Holdings. To be clear, we are moving to 1. Immediately terminate Brent Kroll for cause. 2. Publicly recognize Autumn Long as primary inventor. And 3. Immediately enter good faith negotiations for a royalty contract. We demand a binding vote. Now. Now wait. Theron finally found his voice, stammering. This is a complex matter. We can't be railroaded by these presentations. This requires sober, careful deliberation, not a public show trial. He was trying to wrestle back control, to push this into a closed session where he could negotiate. Mr. Chairman? Eldon's voice. He stood up, calm and solid. He addressed Prentice, the chairman, ignoring Theron completely. Per Corporate Bylaw 11.3, any shareholder resolution seconded by another party holding more than 3% of stock must proceed to an immediate vote. Skylark and Northline together meet that requirement. The rules are clear. You must call the vote. It was a perfect procedural checkmate. Theron was trapped. The board was in chaos. And that's when I saw them. At the very back of the ballroom, by the main entrance. My mother and Aunt Luann. Tara was holding her phone up, the red record light glowing. She was live-streaming this, live-streaming my humiliation, or my triumph. She didn't care which. She was narrating my life to her relatives as gossip. I felt a flash of white-hot rage. I touched Sienna's arm. She followed my gaze. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She gave me a small, sharp nod. She hadn't planned this, but she was a predator. She saw an opening. Mr. Chairman. Sienna's voice cut through the noise again. I have one final addendum to our evidence. It speaks directly to the pattern of conspiracy. She strode to the center aisle. The board may be wondering why Mr. Kroll felt so protected. We have here, she held up a document, a copy of a land use agreement. It's a deal between a development partner of Mr. Kroll and Miss Luann Rhodes, she pointed. That woman in the back, the sister of Ms. Tara Long, she pointed at my mother. These women, Sienna's voice boomed, are the same individuals who have been contacting Arclight's lawyers, offering to testify against Mr. Rhodes in exchange for payment. This document proves a direct financial link between the man who stole my client's patent and the family members who were trying to extort my client's grandfather. This wasn't just IP theft. It was a coordinated, multi-front attack. The ballroom erupted. It was no longer quiet. Shareholders were shouting, collusion. This is a disgrace. What kind of company are you running? Theron. The board members were no longer looking at me. They were looking at Theron and Brent with pure murder in their eyes. Prentice, the chairman, banged his gavel. Mr. Kroll? Explain this. Explain the land deal. Explain the video. Brent, finally given the floor, looked like a cornered rat. It's a misunderstanding, the video. It was out of context, the land deal. I don't know that partner. He's just an acquaintance. The head of HR, who had been silent, finally spoke. I was unaware of the video, the email. I don't recall that email. The video is not a misunderstanding, Sienna said coldly, and the email from HR was presented in the independent rapporteur's report, which you have had for 3 weeks. You did know. You are lying. Enough! Prentice roared, banging the gavel so hard it echoed. The room fell silent. His face was dark red. This board, will take a 10-minute recess. We will convene in the adjacent anteroom. When we return, we will hold the vote. The 10 minutes felt like an eternity. The ballroom was silent, but it was a loud silence, humming with anticipation, whispered speculation, and the frantic tapping of reporters on laptops. No one left. No one moved. At the front, Brent Kroll's chair remained conspicuously empty. Mark Theron's was also empty, as he, Lynn, and the board chairman Prentice were still in the anteroom. The doors opened. The board members filed back in, one by one. Their faces were grim. They looked like men who had just been forced to swallow poison. Prentice returned to the podium, his face a mask of stone. Theron and Lynn did not return to the stage. They took seats in the front row. their heads bowed, avoiding all eye contact. They had been sidelined. "This meeting is called back to order," Prentice said, his voice flat. He did not use the gavel. He held up a single sheet of paper. "The resolution proposed by Northline Holdings and seconded by Skylark Ventures has been accepted by the board. We are moving to a formal, binding vote." The main screen flickered, replacing the ArcLight logo with a simple voting interface. "The resolution is as follows," Prentice read, his voice devoid of emotion. 1. The immediate termination for cause of Senior Vice President Brent Kroll. 2. The immediate public recognition of Ms. Autumn Long as primary inventor on Project 54B. 3. The appointment of a permanent, independent ethics committee. And 4. The company will immediately enter into good faith negotiations with Ms. Long for a new, independent licensing and royalty contract. He paused. "The board will now vote." On the screen, the tally began. It was immediate. One by one, the AY votes lit up, the minority shareholders, Skylark Ventures, and then, in a flood, the institutional investors, the board members themselves. It wasn't a vote. It was a rout. The final result flashed on the screen. Resolution passed. 92% aye. The room erupted. It wasn't applause. It was a roar. The sound of pressure released, of a battle won. The camera flashes were blinding. Prentice held up a hand. "It is decided," he said, his voice heavy. "Mr. Kroll's employment is terminated, effective immediately. The board will recognize Ms. Long as primary inventor. The ethics committee will be formed. The negotiations," he looked at me, "will begin this afternoon." He looked exhausted. "The board recognizes the severity of these findings." At that moment, Arthur Vance from First Boulder Commercial Bank stood up again, his voice calm. "Given the board's swift and decisive corrective action," he announced, "First Boulder Bank will table its review under Section 9. We are satisfied that the threat to our asset has been neutralized. We will, however, be placing ArcLight on a strict probationary review. We will be watching closely." The lever had been pulled, and now it was pulled back. Eldon had not just won, he had shown mercy, which in itself was the final, devastating show of power. Mark Theron, the CEO, looked utterly broken. Prentice nodded at him. "Mr. Theron, you have a statement." Theron walked to the podium. His shoulders slumped. He was holding a paper, and his hands were visibly shaking. He was no longer the confident executive. He was a man reading his own execution order. He began to read the pre-written, legalese-filled apology to the shareholders, citing unforeseen management challenges and a breakdown in R&D protocol. A reporter from the Post shouted out, "What about Autumn Long? What about the inventor? Say her name." Theron stopped. He looked at the paper, then up at the crowd. Cornered, he looked at Prentice, who just stared at him, his face impassive. He looked at me. We offer our profound apologies to Ms. Autumn Long," Theron stammered, going off script. Her foundational work was essential. We are correcting the patent record immediately to reflect Autumn Long as the primary inventor." It was done, in public, in front of everyone. At the back of the room, I saw a flash of movement. My mother, Tara, was trying to push through the scrum of reporters. Her phone still held high. She was trying to get to a local TV camera. "That's my daughter," I heard her cry out, her voice shrill. "I taught her everything she knows. That's my daughter. I'm so proud." I turned, across the entire length of the ballroom. Our eyes met. I didn't say a word. I didn't smile. I didn't scowl. I just held her gaze, my face calm, letting her see me, letting her see that I knew everything. I knew about the land deal. I knew about Brent. I knew about the bribe. I knew about the hush money. I saw her for exactly what she was. Her words died in her throat. The fake, proud smile froze on her face and then crumbled. She saw that she had no power here. Her currency guilt, manipulation, Backroom deals was worthless in the light. She grabbed Luann's arm and, for the first time in her life, she retreated. She turned and vanished into the crowd. Her phone finally lowered. The meeting was adjourned in chaos. We were walking out. Sienna, Eldon, and I, moving against the tide of reporters rushing the stage. Sienna, Eldon said, I need a moment with my granddaughter. Could you start drafting the preliminary terms I believe will ask for 6%? Sienna smiled. A genuine, sharp smile. With pleasure, Autumn, she said, touching my arm. From this moment on, I promise you, they will check and recheck and call their lawyers before they even think about touching your name. You've earned that. She nodded and disappeared into the crowd. Phone already to her ear. We walked down a quiet side hallway, the roar of the ballroom fading behind us. We passed a side exit. 2 hotel security guards were escorting a man out. It was Brent Kroll. His face was a mask of purple, apoplectic rage. He was carrying a cardboard box of his desk effects. He saw me. Our eyes met for 1 second. I saw pure, unadulterated hatred. I just looked back, my face calm, until he was shoved out the door into a wall of flashing cameras. Further down the hall, I saw Owen. He was standing by the entrance, talking to the representative from Skylark Ventures, who was shaking his hand. Owen saw me. He didn't wave. His eyes were red, but he was smiling. He just nodded. Once, a profound, silent thank you. He was free. Eldon stopped me by a window, away from the chaos. You turned down $500,000, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a bribe, I said. It was, he agreed. It was the last part of the test, and you passed. He reached into his breast pocket. He didn't pull out a check. He pulled out a small, old, impossibly ornate brass key. This is not an advance, he said, placing it in my palm. It's a key to a safety deposit box at First Boulder. In that box, you will find a set of incorporation papers for a new subtrust. I have transferred 30% of Northline Holdings' non-voting equity into it. It is yours. I stared at him, speechless. I don't... Eldon? This is not a gift, he said, his voice firm, but his eyes kind. It is not because you are my blood. It is because you have proven your character, your integrity, and your intelligence. Your grandmother Elena's will was clear. The trust is for those who build, not for those who take. You, Autumn, are a builder. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a push alert from the Denver Post. The headline was already live. Arclight Therapeutics stock surges after CEO ousts manager. Vindicates inventor in shareholder revolt. My name. They had used my name in the sub-headline. I looked at the screen, at my name, and then at Eldon. He put his hand on my shoulder. That night, at the gas station, he said, his voice quiet. I wasn't sure what I'd find. I was afraid I would find your mother. Instead, I just found a granddaughter who had been knocked down, but hadn't given up. All the rest of this, you did this yourself. I finally let myself cry, just for a moment. Tears of release, of an exhaustion so deep I hadn't let myself feel it. Later, in the car, I pulled my notarized black notebook from my bag. I had one more thing to do. I'd had a custom stamp made 3 days ago. A gamble on my own victory. I opened the book to the final, signed page. I pressed the stamp to an ink pad and then pressed it firmly to the paper. The ink was dark and wet. It read, Accepted as author, A.R. My heart, for the first time in my life, was completely, perfectly, and utterly calm. I looked up, out the window, as the car pulled away. I saw the hotel doors swing open, the bright, unfiltered noonlight flooding out into the darkness of the portico. The battle was over. The war was won. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please let me know where you're listening from in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.